Hello, and welcome to Breast Cancer Conversations, a podcast brought to you by survivingbreastcancer.org. I am Laura Carfang, breast cancer survivor and founder of survivingbreastcancer.org, a nonprofit organization providing community, education, and resources to empower those diagnosed with breast cancer and their caregivers from day one and beyond. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of Breast Cancer Conversations. Today's episode is bold and disruptive, and it might challenge the way you think about survivorship. What happens when breast cancer strips you away of everything that you thought defined you? Your body, your identity, your sense of control. And then you decide not just to survive and thrive, but to rewrite the narrative entirely. Today, I am joined by two extraordinary women, both breast cancer survivors, both disruptors in their own right, who refuse to let their diagnosis be the end of their story. One is a former international model who underwent 4 mastectomies and returned to New York Fashion Week without reconstruction. She turned her memoir into an award-winning film, Hello, Beautiful.
It's not for self. She's helping this movie for other people. I'm not doing what I'm doing for self. You're not doing, Laura, what you're doing for self. We're all doing it to serve. And when you do that, people know your heart. They know it's not for self. They know it's not to be on a cover of a magazine. They know it's not to be a movie about their life. It's because they're trying to change a system.
The other is an environmental engineer who watched cancer's financial toxicity firsthand and built a FemTech marketplace to bridge the gap between conventional medicine and integrative survivorship.
For me, the irony made me furious because I'm an environmental engineer and I've worked in this field for 35 years. My story took a little bit of a turn. I started to assess, what are we doing to our, the planet? Quite honestly, we should step back a moment and look at the air that we breathe, the water we drink, the food that we eat, the products that we use, because they are having an immediate effect on us.
Welcome to the conversation.
I'm Christine Handy. I call myself the cancer disruptor, but mostly I feel like I'm a hope facilitator. I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2012 and had been a model at that point for over 30 years. Ultimately, I went back to modeling when my chest was concave to become a breastless model to help inspire and show women that their beauty is not external. It's how you feel about yourself. And it's really worth talking about because so often, including myself before my diagnosis, I felt like my entire worth was everything external. The house I lived in, the blonde hair, the modeling career, the relationships, blah, blah, blah. And ultimately, when you're diagnosed with a disease or an illness that shakes your world up, you figure out who you really are inside and who's meant to be by your side. I went on not just to go back to modeling, but I wrote a book about my journey, which ultimately was bought to become a film in 2018 and has, my book Walk Beside Me, which Christine A. has. The book became a film in 2024. It was produced and it's now on the film festival circuit, but also traveling around the world, not just in film festivals, but also in hospital settings and I'm really trying to change the narrative of cancer in film because when I was diagnosed, I sought out media, TV shows, and films. And what I saw was more fear-based. And a lot of the beautiful Hollywood films that have won amazing awards start with a diagnosis and end in a funeral. And I had right to anger that wasn't fair to the community. So we now have this movie called Hello, Beautiful that's won 8 awards so far. And we're trying to change that narrative. So that's kind of what I do on a day-to-day basis, as well as also a keynote speaker.
Amazing.
Now.
Well, thank you for that lovely introduction. So much I already want to dive into. You talk about worth, identity, femininity. You talk about different modalities for how we can share our story and change that narrative. And I love Cancer Disruptor. Totally love that. Let me kick things over to Christine A. Would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Christine Anastos. I'm calling in from Arlington, Massachusetts. And I will note that we had a screening of Hello, Beautiful at the Regent Theater, and it won the Best Film Award for Stories Aching to be Told. And I think following on what Christine H. said about her book that was turned into a movie that was filmed here in the greater Boston area, it is a story that was aching to be told. It is raw, real, authentic, and it really inspires hope. It's an authentic story of Christine's life turned into the book, to the film. And the response to it has been really overwhelming. People have been really moved by it. Others, caregivers, friends, family members, had no idea up until watching the movie what patients actually go through. And I think that that was really eye-opening to them. And that sort of transcends into my story. I was a caregiver for my mother for 17 years. She had a very aggressive lymphoma. So when I was diagnosed with breast cancer 10 years ago, I was already numb from PET scans, mammograms, things like that. I knew something was wrong. I went to my doctor. She told me to see a psychiatrist, and I said no. So suffice it to say, I was actually the first and last patient, according to the social worker, who thanked her for a diagnosis of breast. It was DCIS, ductal carcinoma. But when they went in and did a lumpectomy, it had spread a few millimeters into the breast tissue. So I consider myself very fortunate. I did not have chemotherapy. I had lumpectomy, radiation, hormone therapy. And meanwhile, I was caring for my mother and watching over her as a healthcare advocate and her best friend in a hospital right across the street from Dana-Farber. So my experience was not your typical patient, but what it resulted in was my desire to help those individuals who cancer impacted in a very negative way, from anywhere from cancer's financial toxicity to feeling alone and abandoned. Christine's movie, Hello Beautiful, I think shows the power of community. And there are so many evidence-based research studies out there showing the benefits of having a community like you've created, Laura, for those who are surviving, right? And it's extraordinarily important, but there are barriers to entry for individuals, whether financial, socioeconomic, demographic, and things of that nature. So during the pandemic, I set out to do something to really disrupt that. And so in my business plan, I was actually thinking, I wrote, I want Connect and Thrive. The name of the company, CAT, is what it's referred to as, to be a positive disruptive force in the FemTech sector. So interesting that we mentioned that Christine's two disruptors, very different stories and different paths, yet we're very, very aligned in terms of our thinking, our faith, and those things that got us through what we're going through.
And I appreciate both of you sharing kind of that timeline of your initial diagnosis. Christine H., I think you mentioned 2013-ish. It was around like the time you were diagnosed and treatment and everything. And then Christine A., about 10 years ago. I'm approaching, at the time of this recording, I'm approaching my 10-year cancerversary, which will take place in the fall of 2026. And it is such a milestone to think it's whiplash. I feel like this all happened yesterday. It's so vivid. And then at the same time, too, having been diagnosed with ER-positive breast cancer, getting to that end of endocrine therapy, getting to the end of being on treatment and being watched and kind of really in this survivorship and thriving moment, even though there are still definitely hard days and panic and fear that definitely percolate in the back of my head. But, I think treatment has also changed so dramatically since our initial diagnoses. And then to see kind of that longevity of how our stories continue to hold hope and power and transformation to the people that are listening, reading, watching, or exploring our programs and services and seeing us in the public figure in this public sector. Christine H., if I can ask you said you were a model for, a few decades prior to your diagnosis. What was going through your head when you found out that you were diagnosed with breast cancer?
Well, I mean, it was a complete shock. I, like so many, have no family history, and it wasn't related to genetics at all. And I was a self-professed athlete and allergic to sugar, so I didn't fit any of the boxes. And so it really came out of nowhere. And I thought, mine was a very aggressive form. And I had, skipped my mammogram that year because I was having other health issues. And I just didn't think it was that important to do. I mean, I had, no ever inkling that I would ever have cancer in my entire life, much less at 41. And so I was totally blindsided. And I felt complete emotional despair, like emotional paralysis. Like, how could something like this happen out of nowhere? And I knew I was going to lose my hair. I knew that I was had another health issue at the same time. So I was already depleted. And so the chances of me really getting through the 28 rounds of chemo and who knew how many surgeries was kind of, you know, I couldn't even understand it. I couldn't wrap my brain around it. I had kids that were 11 and 13. Obviously, it was a struggle. And, to have something like that affect you that emotionally, that it forces you to look at, well, why do I think that I was immune to something like this? And why is the despair so great? Like, what is it about me losing my hair and my external beauty and my chest that is making me so violently uncomfortable? Like, what is that inside of me? And so I really had to face that because, obviously how we react to trauma dictates our future, period. It's not always the diagnosis, it's how we react to the diagnosis. And so to move forward from that emotional, you know, paralysis and jail that I was putting myself into, I had to really dig deep and figure out, where did those tethers come from? And so when I did, I started to figure out, gosh, all these people that are showing up for me see something in me. Why am I not showing up for me? And how can I change that in my future? And so I had 15 months of chemo, and I'm looking back thinking to myself, I needed that 15 months to just be flat on my back to do the introspective work that I need to do. And when I was completed with that process, I realized that nothing about my external had any weight in my life. Nothing. Not the street I lived on, not the husband I was married to, not the breasts that I had, not the hair that I had, not the job that I had. None of it mattered. What mattered was my inside. I was tethered to materialism. I was not tethered to faith, period. So when I came back into the living world, I was tethered to faith. Nobody could take that. No illness, no divorce, no trauma, no nothing. I was grounded in my faith, and that would never cause that kind of disruption again. And so that's really the reason why I wanted to write my book, because I wanted to show how really being tethered to this world and worldly things can really cause a disruption, major disruption in your life. And what your tenets are dictate your life as well. And so first the book, but I wanted to also, with my book, I really always intended it for it to be a movie, because that was not, yeah, it was always my intention. I wrote the last chapter, you'll have to read it, in a way that you could see it being a film. And I wanted to do that, obviously, going back to what I said in the beginning, because I had sought out that media and was so disillusioned by what Hollywood was showing all of us. I just didn't think it was fair. So I had no idea how I was going to get that done. But with people like Christine, who have really, stepped up and said, I want to help you. I want to, because none of us can do, I talked about this on social media actually today. The world tells us that we can do everything alone. As women, we can do rah, 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 we can do it. And I think that's a total lie. I think that competition is out, collaboration is in, and if we shore each other forward, then that's ultimately our job. There's no space in this world for people to pull each other down. It's not acceptable, especially in illness. And we all know it exists. And so, Christine said to me, a couple years ago, or maybe less, I'm going to help move this forward. And so it's people like that who helped me with my book, who helped me with this process in the movie, who helped me with all of the things that I'm trying to do. I didn't do any of those alone, and I couldn't have done them alone. So yeah, it's really people showing up for each other that make the greatest difference in any illness, in any diagnosis, and really with any disruption in
And I
life.
think we all have those experiences where kind of the unexpected people show up for us.
Going back to the faith tenet, I think that those people are meticulously placed in our
Yes,
life.
I totally agree. People come in and out as they are supposed to. Were you a writer beforehand, or did you find the writing process therapeutic? How did you dive into such a big
Lofty goal.
yes?
I had been gifted a ton of books during my diagnosis, and they were faith-based and they were self-help books, and I needed them, and I read them. But I could not find a narrative. Now there have been more since, about what I was about to go through. And also, if you think about it, in 2012, that's when all the Housewives show were coming out. Bravo TV was single-handedly starting this big war between women. Let's show on all these different cities how women can tear each other apart. Like, what a novel idea. I thought that was such an injustice to our society. And so I wanted to write a book about women showing up for each other because that's what I experienced in my life. Like, I had all these women show up for me during my chemo, and I was like, this looks very different than all these entertaining shows that we're watching. But somebody's going to has to talk about, like, the reality is you need people. You need people on your team. And so I really wanted to kind of negate what they were doing, and hopefully I've done a little bit. But so that's why I wrote it. And I did have some help. I had 3 editors that took my book and helped me take out stuff that didn't necessarily need to be in there. I mean, my book is 400 pages long. They took a fair amount out of that. I'm an emotional writer. Feel like you can feel what I was going through because of the way I write.
Christine A., you were going through cancer treatment. Well, you were also a caregiver for your mother. How did you get support?
It's interesting that you asked that question because I was really sort of independent in that respect. I was going from Dana-Farber across the street to Beth Israel. Then I'd go across the street to one of the private schools, use their exercise equipment, go back, go check on my mother, go stag. I had a routine going. I had a dog, Wendy, at the time. My sister took care of her, and I would take my sister's dog and her dog hiking. But similar to what Christine said, I sat there and I thought, well, not so similar. Diet Coke and candy for dinner before I go exercise at the gym 2 hours every night. You look great. That whole sort of thing. You look great. How could you have cancer? You're so healthy. And I'm like, I'm made of sugar and fake sugar, so maybe not so healthy. And I knew that one. I just had an idea. I never thought in a million years breast cancer, but I had a feeling that someday it would catch up with me, right? You can't live on those things. No family history, similar to Christine H. No genetic predisposition. And I had my mammogram 1 year and 1 day from the last one. And I had it on January 6th, which is the day of Epiphany in our church, Greek Orthodox Church. And I don't think that was a coincidence. It was meant to happen that way. I learned about the diagnosis. As I said, I thanked the woman. And then I was just very eager because I felt validated and vindicated just to move forward in the process. It was traumatic watching my mother go through what she did, but it also gave me strength. She was extraordinarily powerful, a relentless fighter. So being able to be there for her was actually, when people say, well, you need to do something for yourself. I was doing something for myself by being there for my mother. It was extraordinarily rewarding, and I prevented her from dying a few times based on my own on-the-job training, watching, what was going on in the healthcare system. And I only had one patient that I had to worry about. So I applied sort of my engineering background to that. So again, no family history, no genetic predisposition. For me, the irony made me furious because I'm an environmental engineer and I've worked in this field for 35 years. And so when the pandemic hit, my story took a little bit of a turn. I started to assess what are we doing to our, the planet? I'm oftentimes asked about global warming and the impact on humanity and things like that. And I'm like, I'm not an expert in this area, but quite honestly, we should step back a moment and look at the air that we breathe, the water we drink, the food that we eat, the products that we use, because they are having an immediate effect on us. Studies are coming out, monthly with regard to different carcinogens and things of that nature. So it really made me furious. But I think that it was a gift that I received my diagnosis because I watched so many women, probably similar to the experiences that the two of you had, suffering. And then if you add on sort of socioeconomic issues, people who are suffering, but they don't have the means to do anything to help themselves. So they're racing from radiation to go pick up their kids from school, to go grocery shopping and make different meals for everybody in the household because they're trying to eat healthily when the rest of their family doesn't want to. And I thought, this is crazy. I was trying to give away my acupuncture sessions to a woman who is on so many medications for peripheral neuropathy. And she had to go, she couldn't even take them. And then she said, I can't afford them. And I said, it's fine. I'm going to see my mother. Just go. You don't have to pay me back. I'm going to miss it anyway. And she's like, I have to get my kids from school. And it broke my heart, but it was actually the catalyst for Connect and Thrive. It's a public benefit corporation that I created. We opened it up last year, and it is really to bridge the gap between conventional medicine, which is covered by insurance, and integrative therapies, healthy living products that are not covered by insurance. Because it felt unfair to me that I would be going to acupuncture 3 times a week at Dana-Farber. They had Reiki, oncology, massage, yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong. I was going hiking. I was going to the ocean. I mean, everything to sort of fill myself and reflect on, what am I going to do with this experience? And it broke my heart that others did not have a means by which to do so. So I worked with individuals from Dana-Farber and another team I pulled together, and so created a marketplace of all of these evidence-based healing modalities, healthy living products that could really benefit individuals, but these are not covered by insurance. And so through 2 National Science Foundation grants at MIT, programs that I was involved in, I did the research and I listened to what patients were saying and their friends and family members. And patients were saying they wanted to engage. 87% of them couldn't due to cancer's financial toxicity. I decided to pull together this sort of ability for friends and family members to help patients in a meaningful way. They can either purchase a gift card on our web platform, so it opens up our whole marketplace to them, or if they want to collectively bring together others to support, they can start a kitty fund. It can be public or private, and that is another way for them to support patients. And 100% of their donations go to patients to spend in our marketplace.
I want to take a quick moment and tell you something I'm really excited about. You can now download the survivingbreastcancer.org app directly from the App Store or Google Play. Just search for survivingbreastcancer.org. It is completely free to download, and inside you will have access to all of our support groups, educational programs and webinars, all of our blog content and articles, podcast episodes, and community features to connect with others who understand what you're going through. Everything in one place, because navigating breast cancer shouldn't require 15 open browser tabs. Download the app today. Amazing. You both have such powerful stories. Christine, I want to ask you, you were talking a little bit about worth and identity, but I feel like there's a little bit more to unpack with regards to the number of surgeries you have. Can you explain that a little bit more to us?
Yeah. So when I was 28, I had skin cancer right above my eyebrow, and that kind of unraveled me because that was, I was really in the throes of my modeling career then. And at the age of 35, I had a colon resection. And I didn't even know what a colon resection was until I had to have one. And when I had it, the doctor nicked a vein in one of my pelvis bones, which I didn't even know you have veins in bones, but you do. And because he knew that I was a lingerie and bathing suit model, because I told him that I wanted to do it orthoscopically and didn't want or need any scars, it took him about 30 minutes to actually open me up after he couldn't find the source of the nicked vein. So we're in surgery. He's nicked a vein. He doesn't want to open me up because I've said to him, okay, be careful. You see that billboard down the highway of me in a bathing suit? I still need that body when we get done with this surgery. So now I've put this on this surgeon, and he's now trying to accommodate me because I'm a successful model. And I almost bleed to death on the table. I mean, literally. And finally, the anesthesiologist, who is a friend of mine, said, open her up before she dies. Now, I woke up from that surgery and I had a blood bag above my head. That was a second blood transfusion. And I lived. It took about a couple years to get over that surgery. And you would have thought at that point, I was completely scarred. I had he cut me open in a jagged emergency way, at the end of that surgery. And so I was scarred up. And so, you would think after that, I'd be like, you know what? This whole external value thing, is it really that important? But no, I went right back into the working out every day. I went right back into the, kind of, restricting my diet. I went back into the looking messy, even though I spent an hour looking perfectly messy before I walked out my front door. And I was right back into it. And then 5 years later, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I didn't learn any of those lessons. And now I have to learn them. I don't want to learn them. I want to go back to, filling myself up with things, because even though they're not working, I worked really hard to fill myself up with material things. I spent a lot of money trying to fill myself up with that, and it didn't work. And I was pissed. And I was like, no, now I have to really do the work. And I was frustrated. But when you have people that show up from the colon surgery, the basal cell on your face, to the colon surgery, to the breast cancer, and you go, gosh, why are all these people showing up for me? I'm so ashamed. I have no idea who I am. I'm embarrassed about the diagnosis. I'm embarrassed that I'm going to be bald. I have now these scars, and how am I going to go back to work? And people love me because of what I can do for them, right? I lived a very transactional life. That's the modeling world. You do this for me, as a photographer would say, you do this shoot for me and I'll get you with this client. My modeling agency, the same thing. If you do this free job for us, we'll get you with this client. It's very transactional. And I just thought that's how life worked. I started modeling when I was 11 years old. Everything was transactional. So my friends showing up for me during a season of despair, I was like, I can't do anything for you. And they said to me, we don't want anything. And it was really hard for me to process that. I couldn't understand that mentality. So ultimately, the good news is I finally realized life isn't transactional. I'm not going to go do anything I'm going to do stuff for people. I'm going to serve the world, right? Well, whether it's my book or speaking or the movie, because it's not transactional. I want to actually help people. And so it's a very different way to live. And I'm very honest about my story. I'm very vulnerable. It's not flattering. I'm not saying that materialism is a flattering thing. It's terrible, but it's honest. And I think right now, more than ever, because of social media and all the fake, perfect lives, I think it's important to be very vulnerable and honest so that people can relate. They don't feel so alone in their journeys, right? And so again, I feel like I went through those kind of pruning processes. I wish that maybe the pruning had already been completed with the colon, but it didn't. And so I kept having to be pruned. And I think basically God was like, okay, I'm going to keep going until you really get down to nothing and we can rebuild you. And I don't mind that rebuild. I love who I am. I think I'm more beautiful now without a chest than ever. And, being on New York Fashion Week on the runway, or working with Victoria's Secret, or in Miami Swim Week in a bathing suit. I mean, I'm working with 17-year-old girls. They're looking at me like, I'm sure I'm crazy. And I'm like, and I'm walking like with more confidence than they do. And it's going back to what I said in the beginning. It's how we see ourselves. If you try to fill yourself up with stuff of this world, that can all be taken away. You got to fill yourself up with self-care, self-love. What you say to yourself matters more than anything. And so that's what I try to teach people. And that is really going also back to how we react to pain is how we dictate our life. I had breast implants not before my diagnosis, but I reconstructed my chest more than anybody I know. I wanted a chest. And again, I will be totally honest with you. I did not know about aesthetic flat closure. I'm not saying I would have done it. I didn't even know about it. Nobody said to me at my diagnosis, these are your options. That was never, ever said to me. And then that's not fair. I talk about aesthetic flat closure because I think it's important that everybody get every single bit of information that's out there. And that is an alternative. And it's a viable one, and it's a beautiful one. Why aren't we telling people that? It's because it doesn't cost anything. You're not, the vendors aren't making money. And that bothers me. So ultimately, I had breast implant illness, and that breast implant illness almost killed me. And in 2020, when the whole world shut down, I ended up with a MRSA infection in my chest, 104 fever, and an emergency surgery that extracted my chest for the third and fourth mastectomy. I had 4 mastectomies. That's what they were labeled. That's what the insurance, that was what I had to sign. It said mastectomy left side, mastectomy right side. And I was like, I already had mastectomies. And they were like, just sign it. So in my head, I had 4 mastectomies because that's what I signed my name to do. That could have really damaged my self-esteem. Well, how can I have 4 mastectomies? But at that point, I had already been tethered to faith. And I was like, okay, it's just a system. It's just part of the process. Don't worry about it. Don't get entangled with the language. You are worthy. You are loved. You are a child of God. But when I went out of that surgery and I came home and I was concave, and I, at that point, had a big social media following, and all these women from around the world would send me messages saying, I don't know how you wear that really tight shirt. I'm embarrassed about my chest. I don't know how you show it to your significant other. I can't show it to my husband. And those conversations broke my heart. And so that ultimately led me to call my modeling agency and said, I'm coming back to work. And they were like, I don't really think so. We don't really have your vision. So I said, okay, I gracefully left conversations with them. And I called my manager and I said, I need you to get me into New York Fashion Week. And she was like, sure, why not? And I flew up to New York and I would get into the shows and I would slowly, politely get in front of the designers. And I would say, my name is Christine Handy. I'd like to come back to work. I'm a model. I've been a model for 40 years. I have a concave chest. I think we can make a big splash in the world. And 5 designers said yes. Well, then I was really on to something because then I got one of the largest modeling agencies of the world to sign me after that. So it really is how you think of yourself. If I didn't have the courage to go do that, then I would have maybe said to myself, gosh, I can't be a model anymore because I don't have a chest. That's just self-talk. It's delusional self-talk.
How you are modeling and taken to the stage in the runway on behalf of all of those women who are messaging you, who have that fear or cannot talk about their chest with their husbands or feel embarrassed. And then here you are taking their stories with you and, walking the runway for those hundreds, if not thousands of women who are behind you. So that gives me goosebumps alone.
I feel like it's modeling courage. It's modeling faith. It's modeling grace. And I also believe that all those things can be borrowed. So when I was going through chemotherapy, I was borrowing my friend's courage. And now I'm giving other people courage.
Christine A., how did you come across the movie? Did you read the book first or did you come across the movie first? How did you end up in this Christine web that I'm so excited about?
I learned about the book first. The movie is powerful, but I think the book is even stronger. I think we both have this shared belief these things happen to us for a reason. And that we need, that's why we're going to be disruptors. We need to take this to a new level. Fast forward this past October, Breast Cancer Awareness Month, Christine was walking the runway with this beautiful outfit. She had an ace bandage underneath, and it was just such a powerful statement. I think something like that is just, you watch that and you're like, what can I do to help elevate this and bring it to the level that it deserves? And I think that's when, strong women come together. And Laura, like when I met you at the society in person at the Society for Integrative, it was the Beth Israel conference. And we were talking about synergies and things like that. I think there's so many organizations and individuals out there who want to make a positive difference.
Christine A. it's not for self. She's helping this movie for other people. I'm not doing what I'm doing for self. You're not doing, Laura, what you're doing for self. We're all doing it to serve. And when you do that, people know your heart. They know it's not for self. They know it's not to be on a cover of a magazine. They know it's not to be a movie about their life. It's because they're trying to change a system. And that, I think, creates a bigger community of people ushering that forward. But if it was based on pride and was based on ego and it was based on self, then I think people would see right through that.
So well said. For both of you, what is on the horizon next as we look ahead?
We're selling the movie right now. And once it's sold and distributed all over the world, then I'll take a take a breath. I've been working on this project. Obviously, my book was published in 2016. Now it's 2026. And it's been, I'm not complaining, and Christine A knows this. I work every day. I work well into the evening, and there are no boundaries around how hard I work or how long I work. And I'm not looking for a vacation, but I'm looking for maybe some nesting. And I think once I get a season of nesting and really kind of getting my house in order, so to speak, because everything's a little bit out of order from being on the road for so long, then I'm going to start speaking more, meaning I'm a keynote speaker. I really love being in front of women, sharing this post-traumatic wisdom. And I think that I can do that for the rest of my life. So that will be the next season of my life.
There's so much. I think when you mentioned, Laura, about sort of taking that leap and following your dreams and what you had to do, that I've been doing that, but I think I could probably sort of expand my ability to do this. I'm still working full-time as an environmental engineer because I wanted to fund my company so that I could stay true to the vision and mission. And it's actually a public benefit corporation. So one of our tenets is that we support nonprofit organizations as well, so that I feel like, okay, if I don't have immediate, action in terms of our goals, I can support those organizations that are already doing things to have an immediate impact on patients. So for me, it's really more about this idea that I went into MIT with, make a positive difference in the lives of people who are suffering. And I realized that there are so many different ways to do this. For example, helping Christine with her film and trying to get it into different medical institutions, healthcare systems, et cetera. For me, that's just as fulfilling. So I have sort of a grander view of what I can do. I mean, even working in the environmental field, I feel like I'm contributing to that 90% of all breast cancer cases, for example, are due to environmental factors. So, it's sort of a myriad of different things. And, I like some of those instant gratification. So I have to balance it out in order to stay positive and keep going, because there are a lot of hurdles and things of that nature. But I think that's where community comes together. And again, individuals empowering other individuals or helping. And when you think like, wow, I'm all alone. And then you realize, well, no, you're not actually all alone. People come forth and you would have never expected.
Thank you for that. Christine A., I want to kick things over to you because we have a special announcement for our survivingbreastcancer.org and podcast listeners. Thanks to Connect and Thrive, we are going to be giving away some of Christine Handy's books, as well as special opportunities for people to start their own kitty fund. So, Christine.
So for Connect and Thrive, for Laura's community and those listening to the podcast, I have 10 copies of the book that I wanted to donate to anyone who wants to read it. It's amazing. And then you can, of course, see the film after. And then we also have, for Connect and Thrive, we're donating to any individual who starts a kitty fund on Connect and Thrive. We have 4 $100 donations that we're going to make to the individual's kitty fund, as long as we know that they're coming from Laura.
This is just so awesome. Thank you so much, Christine. So this will be done on a first come, first serve basis while books last. If you are interested in receiving a copy of the book, reach out to Christine Anastos at her email. I will give that to you right here, and we'll also post it down below in the show notes. Feel free to email Christine at connectandthrive.com. It's spelled CHRISTINE at connect, CONNECT dash and dash thrive, THRIVE.com. And definitely reference that you are coming from Laura's community with survivingbreastcancer.org, and you heard it on the podcast. You can also start your own kitty fund, and that will be, again, just through the Connect and Thrive website. Start the kitty fund. Again, let Christine know it's through SBC, and she will donate to your kitty fund. So I am so excited for this. All the details will be in the show notes. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And last but not least, Christine, you also have these char charms. They did a logo for you. You have your water bottle, power of the importance of hydration. Tell me more.
Yeah, this is Char Charms. She was on Shark Tank. Charlotte, she created this for Kat. It's Kat's logo. And you can actually see there's a cheetah behind me. I will very quickly mention, so this is the importance of hydration when you're going through treatment and actually at any time. The cheetah was when we went to Africa, my mother and I were just enamored by the cheetah. And so when I came up with the name Connect and Thrive, I thought, let me look up the cheetah spirit animal. And it was compassion, empathy, swift call to action. And I thought, oh, this is my mother and I. She wanted everything done yesterday. And the kitty fund was my sister and I had newspaper roots when we were very young. And we were allowed to put $3 a week in our kitty fund. So it was a way of I knew, as I had mentioned, my mother's trajectory was pretty clear at the time I took off. So she passed away in August 2021, and she's been with me through this process.
Well, thank you. We'll be sure to link to all of the resources, things that we mentioned in today's episode, and make sure that everyone has what they need to thrive forward. Thanks for being here. And thank you, everyone, for listening to our show. I would like to acknowledge that all of the information on our podcast is from personal experiences and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. You should always contact your medical care team. If you are looking for specific topics or would like to be a guest on our show, please feel free to reach out. My email is laura@survivingbreastcancer.org. Our show is made possible by our nonprofit, survivingbreastcancer.org, and by our incredible donors like yourself. You can hop on over to survivingbreastcancer.org to sign up for our mailing list, make a donation, and explore the 400 plus programs we offer each year at survivingbreastcancer.org/events. Until next time, keep on thriving.